we want this to be an episode where, you know, people are inspired to go get the book. We'll wait to put the episode out until the book's ready to. So, you know, you saw my email where we felt for us, we're a little out of our depth if we get too into the speculation stuff.
Right.
We're going to feel out of our depth and not know how to engage that well. But I feel like, you know, the context of the book for me is a lot of the way I think. And it's really, I think it would be really useful to just talk about, you know, structural racism in this country at the governmental level, how that's being perpetuated, and what do we do about that as individuals? How do we relate to that?
And communities.
And communities. And how are we going to relate to that? And how do we deal with our own sanity? How do we break it down? Right? How do we actually break through it? So I think that would be a great conversation. We play
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, I don't expect people to read the new book, because the new book, honestly, is a totally different tone than My Grandmother's Hands. Decidedly, right? Yeah. Because I had originally started writing a book that was going to be called Our Grandchildren's Souls. It was basically going to be part 2 of My Grandmother's Hands. And then these motherfuckers did the attempted coup on January 6th. And I'm like, I was like 150 pages into the other book. And I was like, this is crazy. like we're watching a coup happen. And if it had to been for the Black police officer who steered those doofuses in the other way, they would have hung Pence. I'm not a friend of Pence, but they had erected gallows like nooses. And so for me, I was like, if I don't write the book that helps people give context to what they're watching, this next book is not, it's just going to be like a money grab. And so for me, it was really important. And you know what? Let's just get into it.
Are you okay if we're already in it?
Yeah.
That was a good opening. Let's just keep going here.
Yeah. So here's the deal, man. So when it comes to white bodies as a collective and race, white bodies don't have a collective understanding, efficacy, or agility when it comes to race. They don't. They have none. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to talk, I'm not saying that there are individual white people who know that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying as a collective, white bodies have not had to deal with the feralness of race. They have not have white bodies had to deal with bad, difficult things? Absolutely. White bodies have had to deal with patriarchy, have had to deal with violence, have had to deal with brutality, right? All that stuff. But when it comes to race, they have not had to. The structure of race has made white people so comfortable. Think about it like this. We're living in a country right now where they are literally passing laws that you can't make white people uncomfortable. They're trying to pass laws to not make white people comfortable when it's talking about race. Now, white people
give an example of
Florida. Florida, right now in Florida, they're trying to usher in a law that says if you teach history in school, you can't make white children uncomfortable. But it's all right for Black children and indigenous children to deal with racism, but not talk about it in front of white children. I mean, it's absurd. But what it does is it makes it so white people, when it comes to race, it makes it so they are infantile. It makes them infantile and immature, right? And so when I wrote Quaking, the Quaking of America, my goal was to say, look, here's the cultural context, right? When I talk about plantation ethics, right? Here's how some of the stuff that you're seeing right now in front of you, right? Here's why that matters. Here's where that comes from. The reason why I wanted to do that is that I felt like what usually happens when white bodies, when large things happen in this country to white bodies, the first thing that most quote unquote good white people do is that they get shocked. They go, oh my God. Mm-hmm. I wasn't aware. And how did this happen? Right. And then the next thing that happens is they don't do a fucking thing. When you watch what happened at the Capitol, and then now a year later, you ask most white people, did you go take a self-defense course after you saw that? Did you go buy guns after you saw that? Did you did you do more study about race and racism and white supremacy and white body supremacy and coups and stuff? Did you do any of that time? Did you study in a community around all of this? Did you see how coups and authoritarianism, did you do any study on how that ushers in? Did you talk to your children like a year later? Are you talking to your children about how they protect themselves if people start shooting each other? White bodies depend so much on whiteness that they think that when the shooting starts, that's going to protect them. And it is not. White people don't take things like that as a collective seriously in terms of changing behavior, charting a new course, taking a different path. What do? They sit there and they say, let's wait. Let's wait till we get all the facts. We really don't know, right? And when when you have at least 10 million people in this country who align themselves with an ideology of authoritarianism, an ideology of xenophobic, right? And they all have and they are enamored with the cult of personality, right? You have a potential to see bloodshed in the streets, and white bodies, because they're so used to being protected racially, that they don't see the warning signs. And so the Quaking of America was my attempt to say, look, this is a big, bright light. I know you think that things are going to return to quote unquote normal, and you're going to be able to count on your whiteness to get you through. But these people will murder you. What you saw was murderous intent, feral intent. And not to take that seriously is what will leave you and your family vulnerable. So that was why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. That was a lot, I know, guys. Y'all looking like, oh God.
Well, I want to know why you wrote the book. And can you say a little bit more about, because this book is so different than My Grandmother's Hands. It's really a different, when I read My Grandmother's Hands, it definitely goes into sociology. It goes into psychology. Yeah. It goes a little into the political sphere, but this book goes majorly into politics, right. And way more into sociology. Yeah. And really, really looking at social structure in this country. Yeah. I would love to hear a little more from you, like, what switched in you where you were like, personally, what happened to you? You're like, I'm not writing another psychology only book. Like not that it was psychology only, but I'm not writing a book focused on psychology. I'm writing a book focused on the political atmosphere right now. Yeah. What happened inside of you?
I don't consider The Quaking a political book. I consider the things that I do at the beginning setting the context for you to understand the stuff that happens later on in the book, right? Mm-hmm. And so I use those first 4 or 5 chapters to be like, look, this is the play here. This is how this works. These are the things that I see in terms of what feeds this monster, right? Mm-hmm. And so what happened is that me and my wife was just like with the Tamir Rice thing, right? Me and my wife were sitting on the couch and we were watching the thing play out throughout the day. My wife was working and going up and down the stairs. So we had the TV on in the living room and going upstairs. About halfway through the day, she goes, she's upstairs and I hear her go, Resmaa, like that. And of course, a husband, I'm like, oh, what the fuck did I do now? Like, I know, did I not pay a bill? Like yeah, I forget to pick the kids up. Oh, they're 20, or they're over 20. Right. So, but anyway, so I said, yeah. And she said, are you watching what's on TV? And I was like, no. And she said, come up here, come upstairs, and you start seeing these fools kicking the windows out and climbing up the scaffolding. And we're sitting there thinking, and I'm gonna give you a little bit of Black psychology, right? As two Black people are sitting there watching that, what's the question that is coming, that is rolling around in me and my wife's head? After about an hour of watching these people do this, the thing that we both kept saying is, how come ain't nobody dead? Why haven't they shot anybody? And we get, I mean, this whiteness thing, like the white body being the standard of humanness. Everybody knows that, right? And when you watch people kicking out windows, climbing scaffoldings, going through, waving a Confederate flag, a secessionist flag, right? A secessionist battle flag. Why? My wife said to me, she goes, how come they're not shooting? Why aren't they shooting these people? Right? And then I said to my wife, I said, could you imagine if that had been 6,000 Black people, indigenous people, brown people, right? Attacking the Capitol. That the amount of carnage that you would have saw on the screen, that they probably would have had to turn away from, right? And this goes back to the rubric that I say is that the white body deems and has deemed itself the supreme standard by which all bodies' humanity shall be measured structurally and philosophically. If you don't understand that one organizing rubric about this country and about the world as it relates to racialization and white body supremacy, everything else will confuse you. So when, as a Black body, I'm watching this and I'm saying they're not shooting these white bodies, I understand it in that context. I go, oh, okay, I got it. This just reinforces. When I'm talking to my white friends who are not like steeped and studied in this, I say, why don't you think they're shooting them? Why would they shoot them? Well, are you advocating shooting them? No, motherfucker, I'm not advocating shooting them. I'm saying that if you take that and you do a carbon copy on the other side, and there were black people would have gotten shot on the steps. And if you don't examine how that has evolved, how you got to the place where now you see that, and you refuse to ask the question, and you refuse to be uncomfortable enough in white bodies to go, we got to examine this. We have to slow this down so we can examine why this happens, why white bodies, good white bodies. I'm not talking about the assholes who were there 16. I'm talking about the white bodies who were sitting there watching it and their behavior never changed. They were sitting there watching it and they didn't say, oh, this is about an attempted coup of this country. And those people that did that hate me too, right? I'm not safe either. That's not what most white bodies did. And so that's why, it took me a couple of weeks before I even called my agent. I kept trying to write, right? And then I called my agent and I said, hey man, I need to talk to you. I think you're going to be pissed at me. And he goes, what? Why? I said, Scott, I said, I can't write. I can't finish a grandchildren's souls. I can't write that. And he goes, tell me more. And I said, January 6th has to be addressed. And it has to be addressed. And I think I'm the only one can address it from an embodied place. I don't think anybody else can. Everybody can write about it. Maybe Trump wrote something. A lot of people write stuff like, but they can't address it in the kind of trauma way, the racialized traumatic way. And he stopped me He's a Jewish dude, a white Jewish dude. And he goes, I'm so glad you called. He goes, Resmaa, he goes, I have been contemplating how to call you and how to talk to you and ask you if you're sure you wanted to go along, keep going with our grandchildren. So he said, I'm so glad you came to this. He goes, because you're right, Resmaa. You cannot write our grandchildren's souls. You got to write this thing here. And I said, so what needs to happen? He said, well, I need to do my job. I need to go back to the publisher and I need to talk to them and see what they say. And he said, but what I need you to understand is they could very well say, because you made a lot of money, sold a lot of books from our grandchildren. They want to. He said, that's just how publishers work. They want it too, right? He said, so they could say, we don't want that. And I said, then I'm done. Then we got to be done then. So that's how it came about.
Thanks for sharing all that. It feels good over here to feel your stand, your integrity of needing to speak to that. And in some ways, it's sort of the insurrection or January 6th storming the Capitol kind of provided this kind of exclamation point on what you were already describing in My Grandmother's Hands in terms of historical context.
Yep.
So in getting into Quaking of America, for me, it's like it brings My Grandmother's Hands even more into the present. It's like a bigger call to action and a bigger context of what, and it also is just so what you were just describing of white folks watching that unfold and not changing their behavior just brought me back to something you said in the book, your new one, about how we got here over 15 generations, right? It takes to get to a point where people can watch that and not have it occur to them that something bad could happen to them.
Yep.
And so I guess,
Will, can I stop you for a second?
Go ahead.
Will, think about the trauma of white bodies that they could watch what happened and then not go, wow, they could do that to me. Right? I mean, think about the years of white bodies. Like in this country, we have a 4,500 documented cases of lynchings, right? Wow. That's documented. I'm not talking about the undocumented. I'm talking about the documented. And here's one of the pieces that I think people miss about trauma, and especially as it relates to white bodies. Most white bodies that are probably listening to our call, listening to this and watching this, most of those white bodies are descended from white bodies who were fleeing something.
Right.
That's the first setup, right? The second setup is that those white bodies that were fleeing something know what it's like to be brutalized, either imperially, colonially, land theft, genocide by other more powerful white bodies. Right. We're watching the same thing play out in Ukraine right now. Right? They know what it's like to be put upon by more powerful white bodies. So fast forward to here, where you have tens of thousands of white bodies participating in hundreds of thousands of white bodies participating in lynchings, right? Many times bringing their children to. Okay? So the children end up understanding, whoa, I'm smelling this, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing it. My body may be having a horror response, but the caregivers around me are reinforcing the silence. So if I say, what the fuck are y'all doing? I know not to say that, because I know if I say that, I will be murdered. Right. I will be brutalized, right? And so over time, that piece becomes decontextualized in the white community and in the white body and passed down as standard, right? That the silence, the recoil, the yielding, right, becomes standard fare. So stoicness ends up being the standard, as opposed to that's fucking horrible. I need to turn my eyes. This is right. You can't do that. And so that's why when they watch it on TV now, what's rotating in the background is this spring loaded, like something should happen. But the way that I've been trained and the way that I've been conditioned is that I tuck it, I tamp it, I don't metabolize it. Does that make sense?
Totally makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Totally.
I mean, I want to reveal a little about my process around, since we're in this. I think it's you're helping me reflect quite a bit here on my own process of when that went down on January 6th. And so I'm Jewish, and so that's what my process was about in those weeks. My process was, could this get as bad as Germany got? Could it get that bad? Like, could this get that out of control? Could we lose that much law and order? And a part of me at that moment in time was like, it probably won't, but it could. Probably won't, but it could. Like, this is next level shit, right? So that was my process, and then of course I was also recognizing, which is why I'm bringing this up, that like I don't wear my Judaism on my skin. I'm not religious Jew, so I don't even wear it externally, right? A religious Jew would. You would know they were Jewish. I don't. So it's just making me reflect on the reality. I can disconnect from this reality quicker, even if it brings back more historical things in my lineage. I can disconnect it from it quicker because I don't wear it externally. Right. I'm not identified in the same way. Right. And I think that's what you're speaking to in general, just in terms of white body.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I might have the subset of, not that long ago.
That's right.
I might not be here, but
that's right.
I'm not as impacted right now. That's it.
Can we work something right quick, Keith, if it's all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you when you said what you said, what I heard were two different parallel kind of like poles, right? And one said, what you said was, it probably won't happen, but it could. I want to take a line and go down the middle of that. I want to ask you, when you say "but it could," what do you mean by "but it could"? Like when you say this could spiral out of control and get like Germany, it probably won't happen, right? And we can work that side, but I want to work just this side. But it could. What do you imagine? And imagination is an intelligence. What do you imagine would it look like if it could, if it did?
I think if I'm just being honest, I think that reality was this could impact my individual life.
Okay.
In my daily life, in some way.
That's right.
It could get down to my body.
That's it.
In some way.
That's it. And what, and if you, and did you go beyond that? Did you think, well, it could impact my body in this way? It could impact my body. It could impact my kids. Like what, where did you land when you said it could impact my body? In what way?
Mostly it wasn't, I didn't go all the way into very detailed scenarios. It was more like, is my personal way of life, in that way of thinking, it was about my personal way of life going to change. I have less opportunity. Will it be scarier in public? Is it going to be a higher level of threat than it is now, which is already, I mean, it's not ideal right now.
That's right.
It's not amazing. right now. I mean, if we just talk about everyone in this country, you could get plowed down at a supermarket right now. Like it's a little hairy out there.
Yeah.
But again, as a white body, like it's relatively safe for me.
But see,
so that got impacted.
Yeah. So here's why I asked that question. Is that the level of feralness and horror that I saw when I watched that is impacted by the way that I move in this world, like the way that me being in this Black body. And let me illustrate what I mean by that. So my agent, who I love, and I was friends with his wife before he became my agent. He's a literary agent, so a lot of those stuff that I work on in the book, I run through him, because not only is he a writer and an agent, but he just has a good eye for stuff, right? And so I was talking to him about, in the book, I keep talking about body, not identity, right? And he kept pushing back on it. He said, well, they're the same. I said, no, they're not. When I'm saying body, I'm saying that there's a pigmentocracy that was created. And that pigmentocracy said, when I look out in the fields, when I look across the street, I can tell who's human and who's not based on pigmentation. That's the pigmentocracy. And there's ranking and power and access given to that, right? Mm-hmm. With the Black body being the most deviant from humanness. The race question in this country is a species question. It's always been a species question, right? Is Resmaa a monkey? And the answer through the institutions, through the legal institutions, through the economic institutions, through the educational institutions, is that yes, he is a monkey. Right? He is not a fool. Just a couple of days ago, the House passed an passed an anti-lynching law, a bill. It's not a law yet, but a bill, anti-lynching. In 2022, lynching is not federally illegal. As we speak.
Wow.
Lynching.
Wow.
So what I said to Scott, who's my agent, I said, Scott, let me explain it to you like this. I said, I love you. You love me. We done been friends for a long time, right? Let's say me and you were both Jewish, and we left the temple. And we were walking down the street, and the police decided that they were going to stop us for whatever reason. Are we going to have the same experience or a different experience? Now, we're both Jewish. Are we going to have this? And he goes, I got it. He said, what you're saying is that identity exists and is important, but that ain't the same thing as pigmentocracy and pigmentation. I said, that's exactly what I'm saying. And this shapes that. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right? And so the reason why I asked you that question, Keith, was because when I'm listening to you talk around, my life might be changed different. What I don't hear in your voice, even when you're talking about it now, is the horror that should be present. Right? I hear inconvenience. It might be inconvenience. It might be, I could potentially be in danger and all that whatever stuff, but I don't hear the horror. When I watch and you can hear it in my voice, you can read it in the book. That was horror, what I saw. That harkened back to the lynchings. That harkened back to what my people have had to contend with since our feet touched this soil. Right. And so that's the piece I was trying to instill in the book, was that piece where y'all just go, oh, that's bad, is not the same piece that happens in me. Mm-hmm. And then giving the benefit of the doubt, that white bodies love collectively giving the benefit of the doubt. You say it probably won't happen. And what I'm saying is I'm coming from a people that were raped for 250 years legally raped for 215 years. When you tell me it probably won't happen, what I hear is that I can't fuck with you either. That you're potentially dangerous also because you don't understand what we're dealing with. You understand what I'm not talking about this personally. I'm saying like what happens in me is like when you say, well, it probably won't happen. How the fuck do you know? Like the horror that my people that indigenous people have experienced. When you say that, what happens in us is, oh shit, yeah, you might be progressive, but you're missing this collective piece, this weight, the volume of what you saw on January 6th harkens throughout time.
And well, so I want to say, just to be clear, first of all, I was relating more to myself around, am I going to be back in Nazi Germany?
Yes.
That was more of a personal thing there.
Yeah.
But the probably won't happen, just to be clear, is I already think it's happening.
Okay.
It's not that like what we're talking about here would be an extreme, fall of society type thing. Like, I already think we're in a civil split that is completely we're at a crossroads. I already see ourselves that we're already arrived.
Right.
But I'm not professing that I'm engaging this as much as I could be. I'm not.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm not, I think, still is I'm leaning on whiteness because it's not. I'm not in as much as an urgent position. Because of my comfort, like you're saying. I'm doing some things, but I could be doing a fucking lot more. Yeah. And that's real.
Yeah. And that's the piece that I'm trying to get at in Quaking of America, is that the doing is going to have to be both individual and collective among white bodies. If you say we're at a crossroads, we've been at a crossroads since 1860. And you keep having these. The only difference now is that there's cameras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's the only difference now. So good.
And we're in a new wave. There's a lot of waves. We're in a big wave right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know where we're at in the wave, but it's a wave. It's a tsunami.
Emerged underneath the wave, and other waves are coming down and crashing around us. Yeah. That's what it is.
I also want to say another thing that let's talk a little bit about this, because I think it's really important, which is about resourcing for safety inside oneself. And there's a lot in your book about what does that look like in this. Let's just talk about the climate right now. What does it look like in a place where you already feel unsafe, right? And what do you do in order to get to a place where you feel resourced enough that you have basic safety inside your body, enough to walk across the street, and you feel like there's some resource, right? And I personally really related to, you threw out martial arts in there a little bit, and I went through Will and I both did. I went through a big journey around martial arts for this very reason of working through my Holocaust generational trauma. It took me 5 years,
I bet,
to go really deep into a martial art until I started going, actually, I am safe enough. I'm safe enough. And I came from a place of walking around going, I'm not safe enough. Now I'm in a white body. So I'm just sharing this because I related to this piece in there. And I want to talk a little bit more about creating internal and external safety resources in a climate that sometimes isn't safe.
So this is why, like in my book, in Quaking, I talk a lot about not white folks white bodies love striking out on their own for shit. Like, I need to know what it's like I need to be safe myself, or I need to make my very individual, right? And what happened to most poor white bodies at the hands of elite white bodies, for eons, did not happen to individual white bodies. It happened to collections of white bodies. What happened in Germany it wasn't just one, Edelstein, right? It's like, we're going to get Edelstein, we're going to get a whole army and just go after Edelstein. That's not what happened. It's like the collection of Jewish white bodies, right, is what we're going to exterminate and brutalize and rape and kill, right? And so I believe that healing has to also do that. Healing has to be communal. You have to do the individual pieces, but you also have to do the communal pieces. You have to begin. So let me give you an example. When I do my workshops and my trainings online, one of the first things, like I may get 2 hours into a session, and one of the things that happens inevitably, I'll have some progressive white person click on and say, Resmaa, I hear everything you say, and I agree 100% with what you're saying, and I've read my grandmother's hands, and blah, 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 all this different type of stuff. And then they'll say, but when do we get to sit and talk with Black bodies or indigenous bodies so we can reach across the aisle and do this together, right? Because white bodies don't want to be in a room with other white bodies to talk about race and to work on race specifically, not everything else, but race. It makes them crazy. And what they end up doing is they start attacking each other. They start going at each other. They start doing the hierarchical stuff. You're right, all of that shit starts playing out, which is why when I do my trainings, I don't have bodies of culture and white bodies in the room together. I don't do it. And if it is, it's very orchestrated, right? It's because that spring-loadedness, that energy that exists among white bodies have to be metabolized and taken care of among other white bodies before I bring you into a room with bodies of culture and have you blow all of that 400, 500 years of bullshit through those bodies. So the safe enough stuff can't just be individual. It's got to be, how am I going to get together with 2 other white bodies, form a triad, and for the rest of my life, work these pieces, So over time, not only do I have a safe enough ethos or safe enough sense of myself individually, but I have a safe enough understanding because I've worked it with other bodies, not just individual. Do you understand what I mean? And so for me, it is one of the things that I always have to caution white bodies about is stop looking to do this shit on your own. Part of your running is that you have not developed a living, embodied, anti-racist culture to hold all of the things that are happening so something new can emerge forth. You haven't done that. So what ends up happening, it becomes either an intellectual exercise or an individual exercise, but there's no weight to it. And so in my book, I really talk about how does the tempering conditioning need to take place? What needs to happen? What things get surfaced that you have to contend with and how do you begin to create a container? Like for me, I'm constantly getting death threats. I'm constantly getting people talking about doing something to me, where I'm going to live and all that different type of stuff. I come from a family where firearms has been part of our life since I've been a kid, right? My grandfather was in World War II. I did. My brothers are police officers. I've always been around guns. I have gangsters in my family that always been around guns. So for me, I carry, right, but I'm also boxed and martial arts and all of that different type of stuff. In Minneapolis, the conceal and carry permits have gone up like 50%, right? Amongst bodies of culture, right? There are more Black gun clubs and Black gun associations. Why? Because Black people are starting to see the Second Amendment as being something that's tied to our survival now, not just recreation. Like so these ideas around martial arts, these ideas around developing triads, these ideas around beginning to understand guns, more and more progressives are still, people who have been vehemently against guns. You're starting to see more progressives starting to begin to take gun safety courses and all of that different type of stuff. So for me, it really is about developing small ways to begin to process racialization and white body supremacy amongst groups, and take what we're seeing as serious, and not something that is negotiable. So, yeah.
One of the things, Resmaa, that is coming through in this conversation for me is how insidious for white folk the effects of these layers of trauma can be, where you're not aware. It's different, obviously, as you just said, it's different for people of color than it is for us. I say us because my genetics shows I have not one gene from Africa, at least in my, that's just what it is.
That's amazing. Because most of us have a mitochondrian of
at least a little
African woman. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. So you real white.
Right.
I'm as white as they come, Resmaa.
You like the prototype of white.
I'm the poster child. So what I'm reminded of is sort of like, as a physician by training, so many of the conditions that kill us are insidious. Diabetes, high blood pressure.
Come on.
And these are all conditions, as you pointed out in my grandmother's hands, are trauma-related conditions.
Yeah, and stressors. Right? Stress conditions.
Stress, yeah. And illnesses of chronic stress. And the frog boiling in the pot of water, who doesn't know he's in there.
Yeah.
And so I started getting overwhelmed when I start thinking about how deep that is.
Yeah.
And in my own healing work, over decades of somatic experiencing and having the privilege to learn from Peter Levine and get a lot of work that
shout out to Peter
helped me a lot. I will.
Yeah.
I there's just always more layers to work through in my body. And so it chokes me up a little bit to think about how pervasive what we're dealing with is. And you mentioned the amniotic fluid of how we created this culture, if you want to call it that. And I get discouraged about how this is going to be it's going to be centuries to create a different culture.
Yeah. One of the things I talk about is that it's going to take at least 9 generations before white people and white bodies even know what the hell this is. At least 9 generations, and that's if they start the seeding right now. So there's a piece that I've been researching lately. Think now, one of the things that we know, one of the things that we know is that we know that the first representation of humanness on this earth did not start in the Caucasus Mountains, right? We know it didn't start in Germany, right? We know that the first representation of humanness, Homo sapien, on this earth started in Africa. The oldest bones are African women, right? We also know that most of us, besides you, of course, most of us have the mitochondria.
Okay, I might have the mitochondria. I might have it.
Most of us have that great mother Africa mitochondria, right? Not to say that there weren't other women, but some of those women didn't have children. Some of those women died out. Some of them were children. So most of us come from that line, right?
Right.
And I asked this question. I was doing a talk actually about 2 years ago, and I asked this question to the audience, and you could hear a mouse pissing on cotton when I asked this question. I said, when did Europeans start to develop pale skin. And you would swear that I gave everybody in the audience a Rubik's Cube or something, right? Because people were like, what are you talking about? Like, what do you mean, when did they start to develop pale skin?
Right.
And even the person that was interviewing me said, like, what do you say? I said, which Europeans have not always had pale skin.
Mm-hmm.
I said, do you realize, like, pale skin is something? Now, I'm not even talking about whiteness in the 1500s. I'm not talking about starting that piece. I'm talking about just skin. Mm-hmm. That the idea of pale skin actually is less than 8,000 years old. I mean,
wow, that's very recent.
Yeah, I mean, you can pull it up. I've been doing all of this. All these science people, all these science magazines are starting to come out with it now, and they think it might have something to do with the vitamin D deficit, or something to do with milk, or something like that. I'm not sure. But when you say that to white people, like the idea of pale skin is less than 8,000 years old. If that's the case, your connection to is really recent. Like the connections between me and you, in terms of a body sense, is very recent, right? So how do we get from 8,000 years, which is a blink? I mean, it's nothing, right? To the development of whiteness. And people, this is why I say, I stopped saying white privilege. And what I say now is white advantage. Because in a society that's constructed on whiteness and white bodies deeming themselves the standard of humanness, in that construction, the white body, it is not a privilege to be in a white body. It is an advantage, right? It is a literal advantage. It's not just a privilege. Privilege is something you can use or not, right? An advantage is something you have. And so for me, the idea of talking with white people and talking with white folks and white bodies around, this idea of pale skin and whiteness is like, like, even when I said it to y'all, you notice that there's a texture to that. It's like, holy fuck. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, if the idea of pale skin is a relatively new occurrence in our evolution, what does that mean in terms of how I see myself connected to that Black woman, to the very first human being on the, like, how am I connected to that? I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about nationality. I'm not talking about identity. How am I connected? And are the things that I'm doing disconnecting me from that creation, from that creation principle? You know what I mean? And so for me, when I'm talking about, where do we go from here? I'm talking about how do we begin to be reconnected to the trajectory of creation? And by trajectory, I mean human to human. I mean human to earth. I mean human to bird. I mean human to, you know what I mean, to elemental pieces. How do white bodies begin? See, white bodies are not even thinking about that type of stuff. Like, how do I reconnect to creation? How did whiteness, the construction of whiteness, disrupt my connection to creation? Right? That's a whole nother thing that I think most white bodies have to develop a collective container to broach that, as opposed to just going about it individually. You smiling, Keith. What's going on?
No, I'm just taking it in. I mean, I think that's a really good, this last piece is actually really good, a good piece to lean into with white bodies. where do you come from?
Where do you come from?
Is really what you're asking. Where do you think you come from?
Where do you think you come from?
Yeah.
Right. That's it.
I think it's a really important piece to reflect on. Yeah.
Well, and highlighting what I'm hearing you do, Resmaa, is highlight it. Calling attention to the unperceived cost of being disconnected from where you came from, which is such an important part of our health in terms of at least from my very amateur study of indigenous tradition, like knowing where you come from is your health. Like if you don't have that, you can't be healthy.
It moors you. It moors you. And if you like most white folks who came to America gave up their names. Think about it. Think about that. They shortened it. They truncated it. They gave up pieces of themselves for the opportunity to be white. Not only that, but that was part of the rubric. That giving that piece up creates a longing. And after you long for something for a while and you don't get it, you're willing to take anything that comes along to fill that.
Well, I also, just to clarify, is it that they gave up their names to become white American, right? Because they were coming from other nationalisms that they had to give up. They wanted to disassociate from other areas around the world.
Exactly.
They didn't want to not pass as white.
And that's the piece that whiteness has currency, right? What you watch happen in the Ukraine with white Ukrainians stopping black and indigenous and brown bodies and Arab folks from getting on planes, that's the currency. Everybody knows the currency. But when you say that's the currency, people go, oh, you're reverse racist. No, I'm just saying that that's actual currency. That when you watch people rank themselves as more human and not human, not because you didn't ask, are you really Ukrainian? No, you haven't asked that. You looked out and you said, in that sea of humanity, those are more human than those. It's a global currency.
Well, let's take another 10 minutes or so. Where do you want to go, Resmaa?
Wherever you want to go.
Yeah, what would be why don't you tap into yourself for a minute? See where you want to take this first.
So here's a place I want to take. In the book, I talk about preparing your body, right? Preparing your body for this stuff. Don't be so quick to blow it off as not really important, right? And one of the things I do, I talk about both in My Grandmother's Hands and in this book, I talk about Vimbas, right? That the Vimbas are literal facets of creation. Like they're literal intelligences within creation, right? And that whiteness has truncated the import of those intelligences. We've said that the only intelligence that should really get any room is cognitive intelligence and cognition, right?
Let's explain for the audience what Vimbas are. So vibrations.
Yeah. So the Vimbas are vibrations, images, thoughts, dreams, cognitions, meaning making and shifts in behavior and urges, affect and feelings and emotionality, and sensate and sensations, right?
Yeah.
And so whiteness can truncate the expression of those pieces. And so what we have to begin to do in triads and in community and individually is that we have to begin to hone those other intelligences so we can actually access not just what's cognitive, but access what's in the room, in the world, in the experience. And so a lot of the work that I do is helping people begin to work with what is it like to have a vibe. I, as a Black man, cannot walk down the street and not have some understanding of vibration, right? Of vibes, of potential both safety and danger, right? My people, I come from a people who were raped for 250 years. They had to pick up on what was in the environment before somebody said something. Right? The average age of rape on plantations was 9 years old. Right? There was the rape this American experiment was born out of rape culture. And when I say rape, I don't mean just women. I mean women, men, children. For most of our history, the white body has had full and unfettered access to every part of the Black body. It is relatively new. Like me talking to y'all the way that I'm talking to y'all right now, that's new.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
That's new. And white bodies collectively have any place in their collective understanding of a free Black body. Just let that land for a second. For most of our history, the white body is used to having full and unfettered access to the Black body. And I'm not talking in the South. I'm saying in the South, in the North. One of the things that one of my ancestors said, Malcolm X, he said, as long as you south of the Canadian border, you in the South, right? is right that this idea that the Black body is only as valuable as the white body says it is in the white body, in that construction, in the trap that the white body set for itself. In order to do that, it had to truncate its understanding of creation with regard to vibrations. It had to truncate its understanding of working with image, working with dream, working with texture, working with volume, working with charge, working with weight, right? It had to truncate it. Right, in order to participate in the organization of whiteness, white bodies collectively had to truncate part of their experience with meaning making, as it relates to race specifically, had to truncate its experience with behavior and urges, feeling, affect, emotionality, connection, as an expression of creation itself. And so for me, the Vimbas and white bodies beginning to work those Vimbas with other white bodies, right, is so paramount for white folks right now, right? That the white folks can't continue and white bodies can't continue to operate when you see 144 people get injured at the Capitol. When you see people dying and were killed, right? When you see people now, many of the police officers shooting themselves, becoming homeless, having very demonstrative mental health issues after that thing, when you see that, and you don't understand that comes from a real rooted place, right? if you don't begin to work those people and work those pieces and condition yourself around developing and cultivating a different sense and a different these other intelligences, then you're going to be overwhelmed and put your hands up and say, I can't do it. This is why I say it's going to take at least 9 generations.
Let's wrap up here. You've spoken to this already, but I want to have you speak to this again in a little bit of a different way. So there were I encountered many white bodies that were very, very distraught, mentally ill during the Trump administration. There were very many people who were very troubled by those 4 years in a deep way. And I don't see that as much right now. Okay. So I want you to just speak in a different way about the transition of power. And there were white bodies that were very freaked out in a big way and scared, and less so now. Not all. I'm not generalizing to all white bodies, but you're talking about something that continued.
Yes.
And that you're writing to in your book. Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about a continuation process versus like a chapter that maybe ended and maybe it's coming back, but it's like, you're talking about a continuation process.
Exactly right.
So maybe just let's kind of wrap up there about the continuation that we're in, and that nothing's going away, and you know how that shifted, that there were many people that got actually very sick in all bodies. During those years, and there's still people that are troubled by that. But want to just speak to that a little bit?
So do y'all remember one of the things that I say is that before COVID-19, Black people had to deal with COVID-16-19, and white folks wanted to, if you notice, a lot of people were saying, well, you know, we got to return, we got to get back to when we could just be with each other. These masks are stopping my breathing, or I got a medical condition. All of, like these little inconveniences become major political rallying cries, right? And this is why I say, Will and Keith, that we're not going to get out of this. White bodies in particular are not going to get out of this by thinking about shit differently, right? They're going to get out of this because they develop a culture that can actually hold what it takes to get the fuck out of this, right?
Which for you is a somatic engagement.
Yeah, and a somatic engagement is a piece of it. But the reason why I choose the somatic engagement is because it forces bodies up against each other and forces bodies to develop a different sense of being with each other and being in the world. And you got to get reps in on that. You have to be tempered on that. And what happens with a lot of white bodies collectively is that when the tempering, because white body supremacy is, and racism is a immature idea, right? Their immaturity pops up before they stay in it long enough to actually mature. Do you understand what I mean?
Makes a lot of sense.
So that's why the tempering is so important, is because you get little pieces of the rep so you can condition your body to be able to withstand the 400 years of charge that is actually here, right? Most white bodies don't want to do that. The moment stuff gets to be too much, they can drop the race stuff and move out to a suburb. They can drop the race stuff and because their quote unquote mental health is too bad, they don't engage in it anymore, right? They don't come back to it, right? I don't get that option. right? And so that's why I talk about the embodied and creating a living embodied anti-racist culture. Your ideas are not enough. Your niceness, white bodies collectively think that niceness and kindness is the same thing as anti-racism. and creating a living if they're nice, right? Because here's what white bodies can do, is that white bodies say, those people in January 6th, the KKK, the people who were saying Jews will not replace us, the guy that was wearing the Auschwitz shirts, Trump, those are the bad white ones. I'm a good one, right? But my goodness is only self-declarative. It's not goodness because my goodness comes out of a culture that pushes anti-racism and a living embodied anti-racist culture building. No, I get to self-declare that I'm a good one, and then nobody holds me fucking accountable. I'm not accountable to other white bodies. I'm not accountable to what it really means to usher in a living embodied anti-racist culture. I get to just declare it. And what's starting to happen is that the tightening that a lot of white bodies are experiencing now is merely a tightening of it is the noose tightening because they've avoided it for 400 and 500 and 600 years. They've avoided it. So now it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And what you're starting to see is more mental health issues in white bodies. There's more stress related stuff in the white body. We're starting to see, right? That's because this piece has never been dealt with communally.
Let's end there. That was thank you. That's welcome, a great ending.
Thanks
so much, Resmaa, for coming on again. It's always great to talk to you.
Anytime I get to work with y'all, man, it's cool. So yeah, it's good.